Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dmitry Kirchev. With me is Mr. Nikolai Stoykov for episode number 13.
Yes.
Yeah, number 13. Purity of perception, right?
That's right. So we don't believe in fatal numbers. 13 is just a number. And that's one of the purity of perception, not to see something that's not there.
Yeah.
Welcome to our lovely audience. My name is Nikolai Stoykov. I would like you to like and subscribe because we can want to spread the knowledge. And yes, today is a purity of perception.
What do you understand when you say purity of perception? What kind of perception are you referring to exactly?
I'm referring to the opposite of pure, impure perception. Just like there is light and day, there is pure and impure perception. And the important thing to realize is that we are all born with impure perception, which I would call dopamine perception. And it basically starts very simple. If you actually have read a lot about psychology, I discovered at some point in my life the teachings of Dr. Sigmund Freud, and it claims that people in general have kind of three personalities, what we call like normal I, or basically adult. We have the child in us, childish tendencies that we basically acquired very early on, and we have what he calls the superego, which is very powerful. So according to Sigmund Freud, every single person that you see is a schizophrenic. And that's my idea, that we basically grow up as schizophrenic. You could observe that in the development of a child. If you have like a very young child, if the child happens to be a boy, basically coming from my experience, in the first years of his life, he models himself after his father. Then later on, he models himself after friends or people that he considered peers, and so forth. But what occurs is that the earliest models don't get forgotten. So the child goes and accumulates some sort of a pattern of behaviors, role models, that he moves on from one role model to a second role model and so forth. But the first and previous role models are never abandoned, or like the conflict between new role model and old model are not resolved. And this results in the accumulation of role models that we discussed. That at some point in my life I had Warren Buffett, Rasputin, and Mike Tyson as role models that I didn't realize. And one of the interesting things is that whatever Warren Buffett made as a role model in my life, Rasputin spent very easily. Did that happen in your life, Mr. Kirchev? Did you have such conflicts where one side of your personality made money and then another side of your personality easily spent it?
Well, that's pretty much every time I earn some money.
Don't worry, that's pretty common. So it's most people are like that. Yeah.
Right. So how do you think that translates into trading? What do you think traders have as their role models? Have you noticed any trend?
Yes. Traders are intrinsically unaware that they have those conflicts, and they come up with all different kind of rules. And the funny thing is that those rules are not going to work.
Made up rules by themselves.
Made up rules by themselves to kind of keep Warren Buffett and Rasputin apart, but that doesn't work. And it usually doesn't work when things go well. So usually kind of like the taste of success in your mouth means that you're going to break your rules. The idea about schizophrenic is something that our listeners can easily relate to, what I call the chess game between your penis in your brain. Oh, Mr. Ketchup, have you played? Have you observed like the chess game between your penis and your brain? Who won?
The
Who won?
hardest. Well, it's the hardest game. I mean, it's over most of the time pretty quick.
Ah,
Yeah, because the
how long?
penis wins.
Ah, always.
Pretty much always. At least when it matters.
Right. Has it ever happened to you to be attracted and what do you call it? And I don't know, annoyed at the same time by a woman, and at which point you annoyed at yourself? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, that's literally my last relationship.
Right. Probably the annoyance towards yourself was something that you didn't notice at first. You probably felt it, but usually, like, you try to correspond. So yes, the problem with most things in life, we don't realize it, is that most men that are straight, basically their lives are ruled by their penises. So the chess game between the penis, they follow their penis, and women follow their hearts. And both those are actually schizophrenic tendencies that are wrong. And first of all, it takes a while to realize that that is the problem. And usually, even if you realize it, there's very little that could be done. And most people don't even attempt to do it. So they just kind of try to come up with rules that invariably your schizophrenic personality will break, because that's what schizophrenics do. They don't follow rules. The important thing is to kind of come up with like some sort of a study, investigate where the problem comes from, see how it translates into trading, and basically try to resolve it. So the problem is very obvious. The problem is that men, we're not just addicted to sex, we're addicted to the female form. And this is very obvious. Child needs to be kind of breastfed. Breast milk is basically the best food a child could have for the first 2 years of his or her life. Children that are not breastfed tend to have, relatively speaking, more health issues, gain weight harder, and could have some sort of developmental problems. So it's very important that child is breastfed for the first 6 months, and maybe even for 2 or even 3 years if it's necessary. And women's breasts tend to be very attractive. So it's warm, it's silky smooth. Women's skin is very silky smooth. It's kind of soft, so that your mother probably sings you. So it's like, if you feel very comfortable when you fall asleep.
What's there not to like?
What's there not to like? And it's very tasty. So the food must taste very good. So it's like there's no other food that's better for you. So this must be very tasty. And if you ever noticed, those tendencies tend to repeat themselves during sex. Hey, has it had a case where you had sex and you didn't kiss the woman's breasts?
No.
Right. Women may kiss your, basically nipples, but that's rarely. But for a man, whenever he has sex, he always sucks on the nipple. Practically 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
So wait, are you trying to say that it's the mother's fault?
It's not the mother's fault. We don't realize, but breast milk contains oxytocin. So to top it all off, how naturally attractive you must feel, nature has decided to have oxytocin be released with breast milk. So in this way, what the bonding that occurs between a child and a mother is actually based on opiates. So the mother gets addicted to the child, and the child gets addicted to their mother. And this comes very early on. And this addiction never kind of goes away. So in that particular sense, you always notice women that are kind of child.
Because the first woman we were introduced to was our mother.
That's right. And it was essential that you get addicted to her and her shape, and you look for her, and you cry for her when you don't see it very early on. That was your part of your survival.
What's the case with animals?
Yeah.
The mother cat or whatever, they breastfeed as
They
well,
probably as
and then
well.
they kick them away.
Yes, but the mother never kicked you away, right?
My mom never kicked me away.
Yeah. So the important thing is that if the mother, or we observe that in all kind of mother's behavior, if the mother doesn't kick away the children, they'll keep breastfeeding until the mother stops it. So they'll never stop breastfeeding, taking, like, doing that. So a child needs to be told no, otherwise he'll continue to do it. We don't know for how long, however long mother's milk keeps going on. I guess could go on for like 5-6 years, however the mother allows.
Wow.
Yes. And during this time, you'll be getting a plentiful dose of Oxycontin every single time. Anyway, what this occurs is that you basically have addicted to the female form. And this is like a very big attraction. And we observe this addiction that goes on unobserved in all kind of historical records. And one of my favorite one is Homer's Iliad, where beautiful Helen was taken by Paris. A man basically stole a very beautiful woman. And in the process, he endangered his family, his city, and his country. He endangered a lot of people.
For a woman.
For a woman. And just to have sex with her. They didn't have any children. They were just having sex. And eventually, everything fell apart. So Troy fell. And this, happened. This is a very common story. And I was reminded of this story by reading about an American celebrity. It's called Daniel Staub, and maybe not quite ethically to bring her in, but if you choose to be a celebrity and have wiki page, we deem it fair game.
Oh, it's public information.
It's a public information. Yeah. So she has been married 3 times and engaged 26 times.
How many times engaged?
26 times.
26 times she was given a ring.
She was given the ring.
Jesus fuck.
And I asked one of the traders, and I said, do you think you could be one of those 23 people that gave ring? First of all, we don't know if she gave any of those rings back.
Women tend not to give it back.
The tendency is not to give it back. But let's say we don't know. But anyway, just giving the ring and not getting married is probably going to be quite traumatic for any man. And I asked several of the younger traders, I said, guys, do you think you could be one of those 23 guys? And they all said, no, I have rules, Nikolai.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I said, rules. Wow. I'm here to tell you that you're going to break them. Most likely have broken them.
Penis is going to win.
Penis is going to win. And this is illusion that if you have rules, you're going to follow them. And the reason why you're not going to follow them is because you're addicted to the female form. And this has been true for most of the human evolution for most men. And people don't realize what the implications of that are. And the implications are, if you're dreaming of meaningless sex, it's just a matter of time to translate into meaningless trading. And I'll repeat that. Meaningless sex, and meaningless sex I call a sex that you don't expect children from. So every time, especially if you consistently engage in meaningless sex,
or dream about it,
or think about it, especially, it will result in meaningless trading.
That's a deep dive.
Yes, we believe it's possible to be a very successful trader that produces good results and engage in meaningless behavior, like basically sex where the woman, you don't intend for her to ever get pregnant. But that, in my experience, is an illusion. And yes, at the core of the mania of our trading, failures, is this exactly illusion of that basically those two activities are interrelated. I've come up with several ideas to counteract this. First of all, admittance that, hey, if you're born a man, you're a little bit a car maniac, right, Mr. Kirchhoff? You're a little bit a car maniac, right? You like cars a little bit too much,
Guilty.
right? And you're a little bit a sex maniac. It's just like you're addicted.
Naturally.
It's like, under most circumstances. So the most important thing is basically to admit that this is the case. And second of all, every single time, especially when you're 20, by the end of 20, you probably realize that it's probably never in your interest to be in love with a woman, right? Right, because if you love her too much, she's not interested. So in that particular sense, you realize that at one point you probably believe that you might have met the wrong ones. Maybe there are right ones that you could love, and maybe just those women that you fell in love when you were early that were, I don't know, a little bit bitches, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? Did you think that?
More or less.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes about, on average, for 40 years, and this is a common pattern. It takes about 40 years to realize that, many of those women that actually you fell in love with may have not been the best women in the world. At some point, is if a man's ready to do anything for a woman, he really loves her. And if a woman is ready to do anything for a man, she must be his mother. So sexuality or interest in sex in women comes very late, kind of preteen years, maybe 8 or 9. Sexuality in men comes very early, maybe 3 to 5. We are probably 2 times more sexually prone than women on a normal basis. And the interesting thing is, once a woman has become a mother, sexuality will go down even lower. So it's like you, on average, 4 or 5 times more sexually prone in perception, in perceiving women. So the most important thing is what's in Buddhism called the twofold system, and what I call talking back to your thoughts. So if you have an interest in women, if a woman sparks your imagination, you should talk back. And instead of following your dreams and saying, I'll do this, and I should do that, and so forth, to kind of push yourself toward neutrality and say, your love would be wasted. Women love only the children. Once this woman has a child, you go on priority number 10. The child will be important.
The babysitter is going to be
important. The doctor is going to be important. The mothers will be important. You'll be on priority 9. And this is a very strong pattern that catches men by surprise. That it's you virtually need to take all your sexual perception back, especially if the woman becomes a mother, because she's just not going to match it, and she's going to see it as a weakness, and she's not going to be interested in you. And yes, men get jealous of the kids. And the reason why they do that is because they habitually follow their sexual dreams. And those dreams to be talked back, not followed. And that's the purity of the perception. Naturally, your nervous system overreacts, exaggerates, embellishes, sees things that are just not there.
So just accept it?
Talk back. You can't accept it. So it's there needs to be a challenge. There needs to be a challenge. It virtually takes 40 years to realize that, hey, no mother would love you more than her kid. Just accept it. Just accept it. In one word, you think that this is your mother. At the core of many of those kind of sexual ideas is actually kind of the idea that women could be as good as your mother towards you. When people say women can't live without them, it's bad with them, it's worse without them, you're hyperventilating. You're hyperventilating because you're comparing all the women to your mother. Women are meant to be mothers, and they'll probably do anything for their children. And in the beginning of your age, of your life when you don't remember. You're on the receiving end of that kind of gift or kind of tendency or patterns, and now you're on the wrong side, and there's very little to be done. And you should just, instead of wishing women to be different, it's just you hyperventilating. This is very important. One of the major things what happens with traders is basically with every tick up, it's kind of like the desire of girls in bikini and Lamborghini gets closer, and every tick down, the girls in bikini and Lamborghini gets further away. Nobody could survive that kind of stress. So the important thing is to talk back and to realize that the Lamborghini you're thinking about with every tick up is the one that doesn't depreciate, that doesn't get stolen, Mr. Kirchhoff, that does not depreciate or does not get hit. That Lamborghini doesn't exist. The women in bikini that you're thinking about with every tick up is basically are ageless. So they never age. They always age 23. The reality is, most women age. Most women get pregnant. And when most women get pregnant in a pretty advanced stage of pregnancy, like 8 or 9 months, you know what they do, Mr. Kirchhoff?
What?
They fart. It's a natural pressure. So it's like, yes. So is it possible that even if you make that money, that Lambo depreciates and all those girls become pregnant and they start farting?
It's most definite. That's going to happen.
And on the other side, it's like nobody sustains more than 60% winning. So in that particular sense, as everybody experienced losing. And the only time to learn something is when you lose. So the most important thing is like when you tick up and you become kind of disbalanced, you begin to feel joyous that, hey, I'm going to get that Lambo and those girls, is to talk back. This Lambo doesn't exist. It's not that good. Those girls are not that beautiful. They're not going to stay that way. They're not going to love you the way you think you're going to do. They're not going to tell you, bravo, Nikolai, good job. I mean, how often has happened that a woman had told you, bravo, Dimitar?
Never. Only my mother.
That's right.
Only my mother.
I mean,
even for the smallest things, my mother does it.
In a normal relationship, it's 9-1, critics to praises. And even if they praise you, they say that was good, but
yeah.
It always comes with a but. But in your uptick fantasies, there is no but. All those girls are always praising you. And the other side of it is losing is not that bad. It's the only time to learn. And very often one of the traders asks me, says sometimes I'm in between my entry and my stop, and I just get kind of scared, and I hurry up and execute the stop, even though it hasn't hit. And I'm said, you're hyperventilating what it is to lose. Don't you want to find out if you're right? Yes. So it's there is a plan and you follow that plan, not because of the repercussions that it occurs, but because you want to find out if the plan was true or not. So at some point, it's really nobody could survive the pressure of every tick if you follow your dreams or if you follow your thoughts. The most important thing, the purity of your perception, is to return to some sort of a balance. Your thoughts are always disbalancing. They're either too positive or they're too negative. Get used to pull in the other direction. If something tells you that it's good, you're hyperventilating. You're wrong. Truth, pure perception, is that everything is neutral and impermanent. And I'll repeat that. Everything is neutral and impermanent. If you do name something that's good, it's because you've made a perceptional error. If something attracts you, or something kind of like a virtue, you've made a perceptional error of judgment, of perceiving. The most important thing is when you see something beautiful, like a beautiful car, you should know that the pain is there. the pain of maintenance, the pain of full insurance, the pain of kind of hitting it or kind of like worrying about it. So it's if you believe something is really beautiful, it's a perceptual error. If you think something is really ugly, it's a perceptual error. Nothing is attractive or ugly. Everything is neutral. It's just a matter of perception. And the purity of the perception is to realize those errors. To realize those errors in return to sanity. Otherwise, you're choosing to be a schizophrenic. The important thing is that this kind of balanced purity of perception can only occur after the age of 20. It's probably impossible to speak to a child under the age of 10 about this. So your first perception is impure, and your chance of changing it comes at 20. Practically speaking, probably 40s. But most people actually never get to do it. And they don't realize they're wrong because their entire life their perception is incorrect. What do you say, Mr. Ketchup?
Oh, I'm actually blown away. Especially, it just hit me that there's so many podcasts and so many books and so many gurus talking about how traders should handle losses. But nobody has ever talked from experience how we should deal with wins.
That's right.
Because it's the wins that set you off.
That's the wins that set you off. It's the emotional embellishments of the wins that are the easiest thing to do and the core of all the negative talk for the losses. So once you start, there's nothing magical good about winning. You start winning too often, you soften. I mean, that's what the Japanese call, you tighten the helmet when you win. And this is a very important a reminder. Every time you win, every time something really good happens, I just remind myself, Nikolai, you're not immortal. You're not errorless. It's don't...
You're not on top of the world.
Yeah, you're not on top of the world. Nobody's going to say you, bravo, Nikolai. Don't even dream that your next kind of trading decision or whatever decision is going to be that good. Yeah, cold showers. That's what they call it. Think about cold showers. The most important, the errors are solved the minute you realize that something has gone in your way. And I was discussing with Mr. Kirchhoff one particular trade, and kind of where the mistake of the trade is at some point, kind of trading action indicates that there is news or whatever, and you are with a winning position and probably unlikely to lose on that position. Tendency is people to go high-fiving and say, yeah, I made money. That's an error. That's an error. The pain is always there. You should always look for the kind of if you're too positive, if you're absolutely sure that this is the time to high-five yourself with your buddies, you're wrong. This is the time to remind yourself, cold showers. Return to the average, return to the mean. Yeah, people don't understand that everything is just like a TV. It's however good the TV is, in 3 months, everything's going to go away. It's the excitement's not going to be there. So it's not that taking away the TV is going to make you happy. It's not. But it's not going to give you happiness. And just remind yourself that everything is like a new TV. Nothing is worth getting too excited about. Your child, your new girlfriend, your new car, your new career, making new high, making $1 million, making $1 billion. Everything is like a new TV. It's if you believe it's not, it's impure perception. Pure perception is basically staying with that kind of the way a marathon runner runs. It's every single time you try to increase the pace or decrease the pace, you are decreasing your efficiency. And at some point, the only thing that matters is your rhythm. It's what's your long-term rhythm? And stay in rhythm. And just be very protective of your rhythm. And usually we're relatively good about protecting our rhythm from other people, but you need to protect it from yourself, especially in those moments that you actually kind of wish that they last forever, kind of being on top of the world. On top of the world, nobody's on top of the world. Yeah. And it's a very dangerous state of mind. that immediately or very shortly after that, usually something bad begins to happen, in my experience.
Thank you for
I see.
that. It's a lot to take in. I strongly encourage our viewers, our listeners, to let these thoughts from Mr. Stoykov sink in their heads. Because, like he said, there's nothing that bad in losing. You should learn from losses. But winnings can actually set you off. And it's proven by the people that win the lottery, right?
Right.
So they tend to get in a worse condition than they were before they won the lottery. So, yeah.
Right. The important thing is just think about this, like the talking back. So this is a there's a pattern, and the pattern why it doesn't occur is like there's a question for maybe our listeners will be careful. When did Mr. Stoykov become started being Mr. Stoykov? Like, he has been like that maybe all his life, but there's one particular incident. It's like that caused many of those things to accelerate. And this is like basically happened several years ago in 2019. I twisted my high ankle. So I had a high ankle sprain. I'm 2 months in kind of chronic pain. So it's like my right ankle hurts, and it hurts 24. So it's like I go to sleep every single time I turn, I wake up in a sharp pain, and I'm playing a man, so I'm not taking any sleeping pills or pain pills. So I'm just going kind of natural.
Embracing the pain.
Embracing the pain. And as a result, I don't sleep well and I can't walk. So it's like everything else move is painful. And I go in Istanbul and I'm having a panic attack. And I basically returned like a day earlier. It took me like a little bit of time to go to the doctor. And during this whole time, I'm having a panic attack and think that I'm going to get a heart attack and die. So it's like 4 days. I'm kind of like, in a really highly distressed state of mind, thinking that like I'm going to die. And I remember writing my will, calling some people to help my mom kind of recover my financial assets if there is need, and going to the doctor on Monday. So it's like 4 days of kind of anticipating death. And I remember speaking to the doctor after getting my results, and then he told me, well, Nikolai, I could tell you that you're probably not going to die. And you're relatively very healthy, middle-aged adult. And it's kind of like, I couldn't believe it. I said, because I was so sure that I was going to die. And I asked him, do you think I need to see a psychiatrist or something? Because, I don't know if I'm getting crazy. And he told me, well, let's try some pain relief first and some sleeping medication. It's like, you haven't slept well for like 2 months and you're constant pain. It's like, let's try to get you calm down for like 10 days before we commit you to a mental institution. And the important thing is that I cherish those days. It's like, most people try to forget about those days or just kind of like brush them aside, and most people do. But in reality, this is like what they call in the Bible is like, in giving I receive, in losing myself I find, and in dying and truly live. And such instances need for you to happen. It's like the only time to realize that summer is not that bad is you've experienced the cold of winter. So it's like, until all you experience is hot summer days, you complain about them. But once you experience winter, it gives you perception. So the reason why this thing happens is like, once you kind of have a little bit of health scare, a little bit financial scare, a little bit of life scare, a lot of your shortcomings, schizophrenic tendencies that you're used to kind of tolerating or engaging in, actually don't occur during those extreme moments. And you realize the important thing. And one of the important things to realize that during those days is like, I didn't think about sex. I didn't think about pleasure. All I thought about is like what I did with my life, what useful things I did with my life. And yes, a lot of, it's a very hard thing to ask young traders to do. But nevertheless, I can assure you that talking back is one way to like get yourself out of this kind of vicious sexual perception that most men are involved in. This is not what you're going to think about when you die and when you're about to die. And sometimes it's like, sometimes people would say that, well, that's unfortunate. I'd say that's fortunate. It's like, I got to experience like 4 days of like, mental scare or something like that. And I got to see like first time like in my life clearly for a very long time, not just for like a moment of 15 days or one night, but for like good 4 or 5 days, what I'm like, what I think about, if I really think I was gonna die. And the contrast is quite scary. So if you really know you're gonna die, you think about one thing, but if you know you're gonna live, tendencies to waste our time and think about only pleasures. So yes, like, if you're thinking about meaningless pleasure, like sex that actually doesn't result in children, expect that to result in meaningless trading. It's like, is it so hard to accept? And it seems normal, right, Mr. Kirchen?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, but as I said, it's a slow process. It's a slow process, and most people that have gathered like the stamina to consistently try to balance their thoughts usually had several, or like at least one such an experience. It's not necessary. It's not necessary, but in trading, like that comes very easy. So people that trade usually have traumatic experiences, and the important thing is to remember the thoughts that you're having while you're having this traumatic experience and stay with them. Don't forget about them. This is pain, but yeah, it's like pain is unavoidable sometimes, and could be a good guidance. Yes, the most important thing is to realize that our thoughts are really schizophrenic and they need to be kind of balanced.
Put in place.
Challenge. Definitely challenge. So it's like there's practically no thought that is okay. Everything is like we don't realize, but we're monkeys. And your monkey brain, we say we are like humans, but we're not humans. We're glorified monkeys. And we constantly embellish, constantly stretch, constantly manipulate, conject, project, and deject even things that so our minds are constantly moving. Be very, very conscious of all those things. And one of the most important things is basically embellishment. So it's like, or correction. It's very often that people would make mistakes. So make sure that you go and correct them. And at the core of your all schizophrenic behavior is your animalistic brain. And the animalistic brain is unkind. So at the core of all those corrections is what is called the constitution for Buddhism, is it's better to be kind than right. I want you to consciously say that the first thing you want to do is be kind and then be right. And most people do it the other way. They put being right first and then kind. And for you unkind truth tellers, be very careful how you answer the question, is my ass growing up, honey? Am I getting fat? Watch out how you answer. Well, look where you sleep. Have you answered that question incorrectly, Mr. Kirchhoff?
I have. I have answered that incorrectly. Yeah.
Have you slept on the couch?
I did.
Right. So yes, the most important thing is to be kind first. And as I said, all errors, all schizophrenic, behavior comes from being unkind. And it's like there's no problem in stretching the truth towards being kind. People stretch the truth all the time, and they stretch it towards being unkind. So at the core, the purity of a perception, it is the idea to be kind. And people get hyperventilated about the idea of being right. It's not that important being right. It's like purity of the intent, purity of the perception comes from being kind. So kind's more important than being right. Of course, there are exceptions. If Buddha wanted to say it's always better to be kind than right, he would have said it. He said it's better to be kind than right. What he meant is, in your order of importance, being kind should be more important than being correct. Willingness to change your opinion, to change your view towards being kind. Yes, and that's the purity of the perception. And we had many talks with Mr. Kirchhoff, how there are situations that this is probably impossible. You can't be kind and right at the same time sometimes, Mr. Kirchhoff. Is that true?
True. I actually want to talk about that concept in a different episode, because it's not just about being kind to others, but it's about being kind to yourself as well.
That's right. We'll talk about it. But the most important thing is to mention it. It's yes, incorrect priorities,
Right.
being kind is first. This is a very slow process. All near-death experiences are not going to help you purify your perception for the long run. It's going to help you clean your perception for short term, all those near-death experiences. But unless you change your value system, where being right is secondary to being kind, no changes in perception would occur. Your perception would return to its previous kind of before near-death experiences. So yes, that's it. Yeah, it's effort should be on kindness, kind of returning to the kindness. And this is very contradictory, because people perceive traders and people see traders or expect traders to be unkind. But my experience tells me good traders are not unkind. They may not be kind, but they're not unkind. Good traders are never unkind. They may have unkind moments, but at some point they just let it go. They don't kind of hold resentments or so forth. And you could see that with Mr. Buffett. It's in Charlie Munger, which died recently. It's those people now, especially Mr. Buffett. Charlie Munger had a bitter side a little bit. But Warren Buffett is, he's not an unkind person. Yes. The most thing is your ability to see trade, to handle trade, comes from your unkind side. And the reason why you're unkind is because you hyperventilate what it is to win. Yes. So you talk back to your voice of what winning is like. And when people say, oh, losing is unacceptable. Wow. Oh, it's unacceptable? You sure? Yeah. So, better to be kind than right. And it starts with, walking back what it takes to win, or what you think winning is, how good it is. It's not that good. It's not that good. It makes you unkind. Kind of desire to win makes you unkind towards the market, towards yourself, towards others. Makes you irrational. I don't know. I think that's it.
It's just a lot to take in. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stoykov, for your insights. Once again, really, really helpful, really valuable. I hope our listeners are going to enjoy it just as much as I did. Thank you again. Please, everyone that is listening to this, like and subscribe. It's going to help our channel grow. Hopefully, we're going to be able to reach out to more people. And that's it.
That's it. Like and subscribe. Thank you, Mr. Kirchhoff, and thank you to our lovely audience.